All right, thank you.
I'm Stephen Woods. I'm from Penn State University Libraries, and my association with GODORT, I am the outgoing chair of GODORT.
I'm Kate Tallman, University of Colorado Boulder, and I am a member of LegCom.
Kathy Baselli from the Atlanta Fulton Public Library and GODORT.
And one of my selectives. Yeah.
I'm Christina Beauvais, Government Publishing Office, former member of GODORT.
Lori Hall, Government Publishing Office.
David Walls, Preservation Library, Government Publishing Office.
Okay, thank you very much. So our meeting today, and we do have just an hour, is to talk about our 5-year plan, which is what GODORT has mandated to all of the various committees. Of course, GODORT is in the process of finalizing, we hope, the reorganization that they undertook within the last couple of years. And this really is a good time for us to be doing this anyway. The makeup of the legislation committee has changed in the past. They used to have liaisons from the different committees and task forces that made up the majority of the committee itself. Now it is a standalone committee with members who are not liaisons from other groups, with the exception of our ALA counselor, who's Bill Sutton, and he's an ex officio member. So in some ways, this gives us some different and unique opportunities, I think, than having people coming in from the different groups, but at the same time, there's more of an onus on us to make sure that we are interacting with the other groups within GODORT and making sure that we are recognizing their needs and putting forward any legislative activity and advocacy that they need us to do. So I want to start by reading what our charge is actually for the committee itself. According to what's listed on the GODORT Wiki, the Legislation Committee identifies issues requiring legislative action, prepares or advises on resolutions for the membership, steering committee, task forces, and committees, assists the ALA Washington office on issues affecting federal government information legislation, and assists and coordinates legislative action with other ALA bodies. So that's a fairly broad charge for us to have. Okay. Now, as you know, John Schuler was supposed to have been the chair of this committee. Of course, he sadly passed away last summer. But in preparation for his taking over this committee, he had worked with the previous committee to put together this document that I've passed out called Government Information Next Initiative, or GENI, and it's a framework in 4 phases for the future goals of the Legislative Committee of the Doctors Roundtable. Its purpose is to facilitate existing and future long-term collaborative efforts in advocacy, education, and practice among the American Library Association's various communities that share a common purpose to ensure the sustainability of library-based expertise that directly supports active community civic engagement and government information resources/services at all levels of government. Particular emphasis will be placed on the impacts and changes unleashed by the rapid evolution of e-governance and digital public information sources over the last 15 years. And he listed a set of 5 goals that would help the committee meet its charge. Now, of course, as Stephen has told the committee in previous meetings, this really is an aspirational document. This is something that I presume the intent was going to be that it would be discussed and further refined over the course of the year, which I think, certainly is something we want to do. In previous committee meetings, we have looked at this and really kind of thought that it focuses a lot of the goals kind of focus more outward and not quite as much inward, and I think we need to find a balance in that, because again, our charge is stating that we do want to have a balance of what GODORT needs versus how we work with and support external groups within ALA. So for that as a starting point, I'd like to look at the goals that are listed in this document and discuss them, and also kind of think of, are these things still relevant as written, or what we think we want to modify them So the first goal is identify issues requiring legislative or advocacy action at all levels of government and through the use of library programs, services, resources, and material. The second is prepare or advise on relevant resolutions about government information for the GODORT membership, steering committee, task forces, and committees, and other ALA bodies. And goal 3, work with the ALA Washington office on issues affecting federal government information, legislation, policies, and programs. And goal 4, work and coordinate on specific legislative activities and advocacy actions through other ALA bodies. But then goal 5 was to implement these by actions taken through this initiative from 2016 to 2021. You know, I guess as I'm reading these now, these really pretty much parallel what this committee is supposed to be doing, correct? I guess with this in mind then, well, let's take a step back. I guess, and again with this group, and of course we've got a good contingency from GPO, which is good actually, since you know, the emphasis on this seems to be fairly heavily on federal government information, although realistically this committee is supposed to look at everything, including state and local and international documents. But I think it's helpful to have GPO here, you know, again, certainly given the, how do I put this, the current state of politics and the uncertainty of where we stand, but also the fact that what has transpired recently is going to very strongly affect, I think, how ALA, by extension GODORT, is approaching legislative action and advocacy. Okay. So, in terms of looking at how we're implementing, well, sorry, I sort of lost my train of thought, now I got it back. So if we look at the 4 goals and also look at our charge, do we think this is still relevant for this committee in terms of where we fit in with GODORT? And I think Stephen can probably help us a bit with this as well.
So, you know, let me just give you guys a scenario. There's 2 scenarios that I'm going to give you guys, and sort of share with you some of the challenges that happen in those scenarios. And it'll show a little bit of our dirty laundry. Okay. So the first scenario was actually the UN resolution that we recently passed. Okay. So what happens is, you know, an activity or something like that comes up that our membership are passionate about. You know, they want to do something about it, right? They want to say something about whatever that is. What they don't understand, and what I don't see reflected in these goals, to be honest with you, is how that happens.
Yes.
And what, you know, there is this huge learning scale that our membership, for better or for worse, they were sort of these elite people who always did this kind of work. They knew exactly how it happened, but they never really spent the time educating our membership in terms of how the process was, the things, the people who needed to be involved. And so you would get an issue, my second example, the preservation of government information that comes up with somebody, you know, somebody's passionate about it. They want GODORT to have a voice in it, but they don't fully understand the process that it needs to go through to really be effective. Okay? Some do, some actually, I will say that there are some people that are evil enough that do know the process that it needs to go through, but don't, you know, go through those necessary channels, right? But for the sake of argument, and for the notes, I would say the majority of people just simply don't know, and it's not, there's no malicious intent. The problem is that it's alienated us by not going through the channels and the processes. It doesn't help empower us as an organization, we're alienating ourselves from everybody.
And when you say alienating yourselves, not just within GODORT, but within ALA itself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
After having gone to the legislative assembly and yesterday's meeting, I would say that's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you know, there's in part, you know, being one of the 5 of your goals is simply to make friends, you know? I don't know.
That's a big goal.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
just understand. We just need to understand what the
Right.
process is.
Right.
I don't.
Need to
It's not
understand.
clear.
Yeah, it's not that clear. So I asked, I told Chris and Susan, I was like, here's a wonderful, successful resolution that went through the process. There are some things that I don't necessarily agree with the resolution, but that's fine.
Mhm.
I said, document this. What is it you needed to do to make that happen?
Mhm.
This committee needs to know that.
Mhm.
If indeed this committee is going to function the way that it is talking about. But yeah, the other thing that this committee needs to think about, and so, you know, everybody, when we got rid of the liaisons, everybody was going, what are you guys doing? It's just like,
Mhm.
we're not eliminating, we're reprioritizing. We're
Mhm.
thinking about, so in order, if this committee really is going to be state, local, fed, and international, then it probably needs to be a more robust group.
Yes.
It's probably going to need some different components. It's going to need. So, you know, when I was trying to give GODORT vision of those 5 core pieces, advocacy, education and training, community, and 2 others that are blanking out on my mind, obviously, that I, whatever. If advocacy was that important to our membership, then we needed to put the right resources into doing that.
Yep.
So, I'll stop.
Well, no, I agree 100% with what you say, and I guess as you were explaining this, it occurs to me there is, honestly, after seeing what's happened these last couple of days, I think there's quite a bit of merit to having this group be standalone and not having liaisons from other groups, because I think that gives us more of a, in theory, more of an objective view as these things go through. But you're right. I mean, the biggest thing, it's not like this documentation isn't out there in terms of what we're supposed to do, because in doing the Schuler Memorial Resolution, you know, I went through it again because this was a memorial resolution. Absolutely wanted to make sure it was done right. But the instructions from ALA on how to do this are very clear. But as an example, I've sent this to steering and said, okay, you know, according to this, we need to have a mover and a seconder, and immediately got someone said, oh no, but according to this, we don't. It's like, I looked at the rules, you know, I looked at the rules, and it's very clear that you have to have this. And so again, it seems like people really don't quite get that there are hoops to jump through to do these things. And you're right, it does alienate people when you put something forward, you know, without having. And on a personal note, when I saw copies of that resolution sitting at the table yesterday at Federal Documents Task Force, I was a little irritated because it really hadn't gone through legislation yet, you know? And groups can't do an end run around us to get what they want, or they shouldn't be.
That's correct.
Yeah.
In terms of where we're going for the future, that this group really needs to vet that process.
Yeah.
But likewise, you know, part of GODORT's problem has been that we do document well. We have 21 chapters of policy and
Yep.
procedures manual.
In fact, I
But
have our-
who reads it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's this idea that
Yeah.
well, it's
I have it
there.
up. Yeah, I've got it.
It's there, so
Yeah.
you should know it. That's dumb.
But the other thing though, well, but the other part of that though, I guess, you know, when I look at that, it's broken up very clearly by each committee, you know, so it says exactly what they're supposed to do, but I'm looking at ours, it's not accurate.
Right.
It hasn't been updated in a while. In fact, there's something at the very end called the National Action Alert Network. What the hell is that?
Right.
Seriously,
Right.
because I looked there, I can't find anything on it, you know? And as a side note, that probably should be any committee chair's responsibility. The first thing you do is you look at your policy and procedures manual to make sure it's up to date, because this was last done in 2012, and that's, you know, way too long ago. But I guess, well, in terms of numbers, okay, so this group right now has what, 5, 6 members, including Bill?
6, yeah.
We had one other person, and she apparently dropped her ALA membership and got a new job and neglected to tell us. You know, in looking at.
Absolutely.
Come in. Do that here too. In looking at numbers also, and looking at what we do, I wonder if there is some merit, unlike other groups, of having staggered memberships where you're on for 2 years, because I think, you know, a lot of these, you know, and again, it's not clear to me how the memberships work, because even the people when I started, I asked when do you rotate off, and they're like, I'm not really sure. So that needs to be clarified, but I think there's some merit in having like a two-year term. Yeah, you know, so, because a lot of this stuff takes a lot of time.
Right.
And what we seem to be lacking is institutional knowledge of this particular group, because, remind me, Kate, when I remember our first meeting, you know, I asked about these things that we're going through and what you and Frank had been on.
Yeah.
And you kind of didn't know what was
We
going on.
didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're on the committee, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, and again, that is on the chair, of course, to make sure that you're, you know, keeping people in the loop. But it also kind of speaks to the fact that if you've got someone in the chair position who's got their own agenda, and they're going to force it through regardless of what the other people think, because they don't think they need the other people to work with, that's a problem too.
And they don't know.
And they don't know. Yeah.
So, you know, the other thing that I think needs to happen is there needs to be some process of onboarding.
Yes.
So, you know, you have, and that even was something that early on I was trying to challenge nominations. It's one thing to identify leaders, it's another thing to say, if you're going to be a leader, let's tell you what that looks like.
Yeah.
You know, let's show you what that looks
Yeah.
like. So, you know, you could have that staggered thing, but likewise, make it mandatory that you have a meeting that's all about onboarding. This is what we do. This is how it looks. There's not going to be any shadow of doubt what it is that goes on here and how it goes.
And I would also say from that, if we are looking in terms of having people serve a 2-year term on this, that the chair should be someone who is in their 2nd year, because that means a certain student continuity.
Sure.
You know, you don't have someone like me who comes in and is like, oh crap,
Yeah.
so which I kind of did. Yeah.
Sure. I did that as the chair.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Nice. I guess the other thing I would suggest along with onboarding is I think it would be good for this particular group when a new steering committee comes in, is that one of the first, if not the first meeting of the steering committee be that legislation sits down and say, okay, this is what needs to happen if you want to put something forward, so there is absolutely no ambiguity. So, and with the understanding that if you try to do an end run around our system, it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, it also, you know, the emphasis on this kind of speaks to GODORT's integrity and how we appear to the rest of the group.
And that was the intent of the fire chat that I asked
Yeah.
Bill and John to do, was to provide our membership with some clue how this works.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, I'm taking notes here. Hold on 1 second here.
I'd be interested to know from you guys, your perspective. Some of the things that I know you're over there smiling. What are ways that we can be more effective in creating advocacy that is more, so we're not alienating ourselves from GPO.
Well, I think the reason I'm smiling is because when I was involved in GODORT years ago, before, I think I was working at Georgetown at the time, so it would have been around 2007, 2008, I worked on the GODORT ad hoc strategic planning committee, and I felt the same way. I mean, I feel like some of the things that you're saying were happening then, so that was, where are we, ownership of something like that, maybe I've forgotten, and have that be their project, have that regular maintenance of how we do things be their project.
Well, maybe the bigger thing, and maybe this comes from the GODORT chair, is again, this whole onboarding thing, not just for us, but for new committee chairs, is when you come in, these are the things you need to do. You need to review your policy and procedures.
Your wiki, your
And
website,
yeah, get all these things up to date.
get the right email addresses.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
for goodness sake.
Yeah,
I can't even, I have some stories from
Oh,
being
yeah.
a brand new librarian coming into GODORT, and it was like, I have no idea what's going on. I'll just show up at this room and hope that they're there.
Well, but also, it also should be, one of the responsibilities of every chair to make sure all your documentation winds up on the wiki, because we have a gap now of several years where nothing, we're missing things, and I'm trying to recreate this. But these are things again, and as a side note, as a librarian, it always never ceases to amaze me how disorganized we can be. This is what we do,
Right.
I mean, I've been going to ALA off and on since 1996.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it's almost like ALA needs to produce a book called ALA for Dummies.
Yeah.
Because we're librarians and we deal in information, like much of ALA is oral history.
Yeah.
And we don't really write things down
Mhm.
and keep them updated as
Yeah.
much as we should. But I don't know, from my most recent association with GODORT, which was not what I was doing at ALA until recently, it almost seems like there's this tension between GPO's strategic plan, our long range things, the things we're trying to do from the top, if you will, and a certain felt need, however strong, for want of a better way to say it, at the other end of the bottom. And it seems like they kind of come at each other like this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's something productive comes out of that, but a lot of times it seems like there's a lot of dust and a lot of noise,
Mhm.
and when it settles, we all go back after ALA.
What happened?
What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
Who are those people?
Right.
And I wonder if in terms of the process, there couldn't be some way that, I realize this is all volunteer. People are not going to suddenly stand up and say, yes, we're going to help GPO do something. Because that doesn't necessarily work either, because we've got federal regulations, federal
Right.
Right.
But I wonder even if in terms of achieving a sense of a knowledge and feel of this is what the game plan is and why, what we're trying to do at the top, if it isn't sort of radiating it downward and outward,
Mhm.
how we can support individual libraries doing preservation things, how we can support individual libraries trying to do cataloging things. I mean, just kind of, because the goals of some of the initiatives that we're trying to do are not necessarily bound. We've been given more or less the guidance that we go outside the FDLP, so you don't necessarily have to be some help aid systems, not having cash.
I understand.
At least expertise on managing government publications. So I wonder if there isn't a way we can formulate, like we've got it's January 2017, we've got our strategic plans, our goals, and things we're trying to do for the year. We've got things for the Federal Information Preservation Network and strategic preservation we're trying to do. How does that get out to everybody in the field that would be interested in GODORT?
Well, and Lori mentioned that yesterday when I asked specifically. Well, no, when I asked, but this is good, because I had asked Lori specifically, what do you need? And I did that strategically, by the way. What does GPO need from GODORT in terms of support and advocacy? And you had said, help us get the word out. And it's very obvious, certainly, that people don't know, which sort of surprises me, because, as a depository library, we get tons of information that way. Of course, you can't force people to read it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if GODORT is going to be an effective advocate for GPO, we can't be undermining or doing end runs or arguing with that. Now, again, if this is something, and having been on council, I am well aware of this, is if this is something that the community thinks is important, we need to let you know. not necessarily that you could do it, or, like, again, I don't think anyone's gonna argue that we'd all love to have more money for our libraries for everything, not just for, I mean, that's just what libraries are.
Right.
But it seems like we're missing opportunities to tell you directly, or to tell GPO directly what we need. I think it's better with council, certainly, and the DLC meetings, because, that's, of course, a very, captive audience with that. But when it comes to GODORT, it's a different thing entirely. Now, when I started going to the DLC meetings, GODORT actually had a meeting at the DLC meetings, and I forget why that went by the wayside.
I kind of know why, but.
Well, you can tell me later. Well, it went from meetings to happy hours to nothing.
Yeah.
I think, one of the problems is, and some of it is connected with what you're talking about in terms of getting the information out there, is what is it that GODORT ultimately wants as an outcome of their advocacy?
Mhm.
Because part of the problem is that the way that some folks see advocacy is it's a trumpet that's just making a whole bunch of noise, right? I sure hope our advocacy is more than that, right? I hope that it's more than just noise. So when we say to GPO, how can we advocate? We should be able to say, when we use the word advocate, we're hoping some outcomes can happen. So like when we say, we'd like to advocate that GPO get the monies that it needs from our government to operate. There's an measurable outcome to that advocacy. When and this has always been my frustration with GODORT. When I advocate for free government information, I can't measure that. There's nothing that I can say, we got that. So I would, part of it is, what do we mean by advocacy? If it's just getting the information out there, then we don't need to advocate. We just need to write an article,
Or do a program or
or
something.
do a
Yeah.
program or something. So I do think that there needs to be a definitive expectation when we say advocate, that whatever we're advocating has a very measurable outcome,
Right.
potential outcome.
Yeah.
Whether or not GPO gets all the money it needs, at least we advocated that they got it, right?
But I also think, and I think Judy Russell made a very excellent point yesterday, and I did thank her for that, by the way. It's a long history thing. But no, in reality, she was exactly right that first of all, if you're going to do something like Bernadine is suggesting, you need to go bigger in terms of, like you say, a gift authority plus, authority, grant writing authority, which, is a whole different thing. But also, she pointed out that people forget this. If you're going to do something, it has to be with GPO's blessing. You can't just go and say, oh, we want to do this for GPO, and then GPO is saying, no, we don't want it. And they're like, yes, you do, and we're going to enforce this. And that was the big problem with that.
There was we all worked on the FDLP forecast study.
Right.
Where we surveyed the community.
Yeah.
And when we were holding that data together, these were just the FDLP libraries, right? And we ended up having to create a category for things that people wanted. And the questions were mixed methods. So there were some qualitative where we said, tell us what you think we should do about this, or tell us what you think, So they wrote little essays, and then we had to go through and code those. We ended up creating a category for things not possible on Earth due to statutory.
Yeah.
There was just
Right,
these.
right.
Well, you guys should.
You guys read your
money, and that's within our own community. So I think maybe there is more of a need of people should know better. But how do they know better if they don't know what?
Well, I also think it also is very determined by who our director or previous public printer is and what their strategy and approach is. And so, the next one coming in, it may have a bigger global picture. The one we have now is very results oriented and and very, very specific as to she wants accomplishments. So the big picture is not the way she operates. You know, she is a very, maybe that's also me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a much more detailed, big picture, okay, let's get it done in a detail. That's how the current public, for lack of a better word, she is the public printer, new title,
Yeah.
wants results, exactly what you're saying. Now, the next one coming in may not be that way. So it also depends on the approach.
So maybe our term needs to be flexible
Yeah.
enough to.
Right, so it's much easier at the current public printer and the deputy public printer, which Bernadine has talked to, I've talked to him. He is much more, this is Jim Bradley, get it done, let's see results, make it happen. So, and that's how our approach has been.
And I think also and what you're saying is absolutely correct, is that the individual who's functioning as a public printer, now the director of GPO, we have Title 44, we have mandates that we have to cover, but sometimes we have so many things going on that the different priorities change, or the different ways that we can carry out our mandates change. I'm not speaking for you, I hope.
No, that you're
But that's been my
right.
experience at GPO.
Right.
As long as we keep focusing on that long-term goal, we keep working on that path, but we might shift over to this path, shift over to this path. It's at an abstract level, but it does have to be done at measurable outcomes and measurable quantitative terms. Qualitative is great, and there's a lot of qualitative data, but we also need to have quantitative data.
So you've got, the FDLP libraries, you've got libraries that collect government publications, and there's a certain need there. And, just in terms of trying to figure out strategically, what is something that isn't on our list, that could be on a public list, that would be worth researching, helping us? I don't know, this is just wild brainstorming.
Yeah.
There is this, more than any other data, there is this perception that all government information is already online, is already available, is already. We know it's not. But that is, I would guarantee if you grab 10 people out of the crowd yesterday, walking to the protest march, 9.5 of them would have said, "I've got all government information online." So I don't know, is that a research project? Is that some sort of?
We take it even down further. This came up recently that there was a perception by the members of Congress who support FDCIS is that, and this was like, that they assume that stuff, historic stuff is there. So, they don't make the distinction between 1993, 1994.
Yeah, this isn't even the public.
Correct. So, this is who we're working for. They assume that when they're looking for a 91 hearing, it's going to be on FDCIS. Well, it ain't, because the legislation only started in 1993, 94. So miraculously, we do maybe have a mandate to go and get that older information in. That takes a digitization contract, that takes money, aren't you doing that with your money already? We're giving you money, aren't you doing that?
Right.
So even our own people that we're working for, there is those assumptions too, so which means, we gotta scramble and get some projects going to support them.
But that largely has been through a different interpretation, of that statutory authority. I've been at GPO 6 years. We've moved from you can't authenticate third-party content, you can't digitize, you can't give money to libraries. You can do preservation as long as you call it outreach. It's the same statute.
Right.
To now you can digitize, now you can provide money to libraries, of course you should call it preservation, that's what it is, isn't it? It's a complete 180. So I wonder I would say one of the greatest things that we can do for GPO right now is recognize these prestige changes, these strategic, huge changes that have happened under this current director, and the direction we've been able to go with some of these strategic initiatives, and talk about how cool they are.
Yeah.
Put an article in, try to get, if somebody wants to do something, get in line, get a senator to put a line in the Federal Register thanking GPO about how great they're trying to do. That would be more helpful to us than $2 million in grant money, honestly.
No, I mean, you're right, David, we really don't know whether,
Yeah.
just like Wayne and I were talking a few minutes ago, what is the most important thing to advocate, to say how useful our organization is, even though we're kind of small. You don't, do we want to draw attention to ourselves? Do we not? We don't know. So why not, say it is changing administration. Let's support that. I think that's really important at this point in time.
Yeah, I do too. I think historically it's very difficult for Congress to pick a fight with an organization that the common people are getting something good out of, unless it's the arts. And that kind of, we've transformed ourselves very much from a compliance officer. We went out to libraries, we said, check, you got these books, check, you got access, check, thank you, we'll disappear into the night, back to Washington. We've completely transformed that into a service-oriented, customers-oriented model, lots of dollars, lots of library business, lots of help in trying to, write guidance documentation, basically to be a service model organization, based on the belief that all these librarians are managing this collection, national collection, for us, and we're all in this together. And we may have the sign on our nameplate that says we're in Washington and we technically own this collection, and we're supposed to be controlling it. But that collection is in your library, and so it's got to be a team effort.
Yeah.
And I think we've achieved the ability to do team. And you would not believe the transformation that we have undergone in 3 years. And you would think there'd be a chorus of people out there, and they have. Oswego Library Council is very supportive and written a resolution thanking us for this. But somehow that message isn't getting out.
So what if there was, sounds like there's an awareness, advocacy, connection, right? And awareness is always around programming, right? So this is just an observation for me, is that oftentimes something happens, we come to ALA and everybody feels like they need to write a resolution about whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
So the UN depository says something and we gotta write something about it. In order, it seems like in order for that concept to go through some sort of thoughtful process, in some ways would it be, this is just me brainstorming here, would it be beneficial to say it needs to go through a program first? It needs to be vetted so that it's focusing on awareness, where all the parties are being able to present and share on the concept, and then out of that process of programming and awareness, we're identifying resolutions, or we're identifying ways to advocate. So part of that programming could simply be, we're going to have a program on preservation, and part of that programming would be those people talking about how GODORT can advocate for whatever that topic is. But at least it forces the topic to have some thoughtful process before we're sitting down and trying to write some resolution on something that hasn't even been, the awareness isn't even there. You're asking people to write a resolution, and this is actually the problem, is that you're writing a resolution on something you know nothing about.
Yes, exactly.
Write a resolution on John Schuer.
Yeah.
If you didn't even know it, you're stuck.
Well, yeah, no, I didn't, and see, this is the thing, but this is the thing, when I, to use that as a good example, actually, I met him once or twice, I did not know him well, and so I put out a call to past council chairs, to steering, to other people who knew him, actually Amy Quinn had worked for him and was, considered him a brother, so I got a lot of information that way, but again, I wasn't going to just write a resolution for some guy I didn't know.
Right.
And I also made sure to vet it through different people to make sure that this, came out right, because again, with something like this in particular, I felt a huge amount of responsibility that we do something that was thoughtful and that was accurate, because again, not only do you want to honor his memory, because other people are going to see this, but this is also a reflection on GODORT. We're not going to put something out that makes us look foolish,
Right.
or disrespectful or what have you. But that really should extend to anything else, and I really do like this idea of, if there are going to be resolutions, that should be the end result, not the beginning. I mean, if you've got an idea, say, okay, it would be good for us to, do some sort of resolution that supports GPO. Okay, so again, say it's preservation. So we talk to GPO. We see if they even want our help on this, if this is something that would be a good idea, because there's nothing wrong with throwing out ideas. But then if that's the case, okay, so we're identifying one thing. So we do a program to educate everybody about this particular topic, and then discuss afterwards, what are the outcomes from this? What can we do from here, okay?
Right. That's a big difference.
Right.
Yeah.
The resolution being the end result.
Yes.
And being the final product to a
Yeah.
resolution like Bernadine's, which really sounds like that's only the beginning
Right.
of an ongoing
Right.
process.
Yeah, because if you can identify a problem, because of course we can always identify either a problem or something that needs more attention, you need to do research into it, because again, what you perceive as a problem may just be that you don't know what's actually going on.
Right.
I mean, one person's problem is another person's annoyance,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'm enjoying this conversation.
Oh, good. Okay.
I would say the problem thing triggered something, because certainly NTIS is going through a metamorphosis.
Yeah.
And I would think of it as we're this little microcosm part of what's the bigger GPO. Strongly. But we're looking at, we talk about problems. We often are so close to the situation or topic. We think we know the solution, get started on the path, and like, oh, tough challenge. That's not really what we wanted. That's not really what the end person or the end user was going to benefit from. You have to get agile about these kinds of things. What I like, I'm not a librarian. I always like to say that so that people won't think that I'm just dumb. I'm just dumb. I didn't get trained there. But what I do like about being around the library environment is the structure and the knowledge about information. The flip of that is most of the people that use the information don't have the built-in knowledge. I am often astounded with people. We were just talking about some of the assumptions made about information and about what's, even things such as Google, it's there. Yes, but it's 5,000 things that are there and then that aren't even totally relevant. What has to happen is both to take the librarianship skill set, but we were talking about, when I was listening to it, this whole thing, what is the business, and I hate to use the word just business, but the outside of your box view of the thing. The resolution is like not just, you couldn't stay within your box because you didn't know.
Right.
You had to get out of that box, interact, and what have you. And I think that's the challenge that we have, whether it's the legislative committee or any of these information committees. It's that we're dealing with a totally different generation too, or people, or users. NTIS has to look at different users and different expectations. Open is open, but it is not free. And how do you do that when you weren't being appropriated, but you still have to follow those statutes? And you still, and actually, from my world of being in business, that's just a challenge, not an impossibility. It is overwhelming, but it's not impossible. You do have to figure out something, and money is going to always be shrinking because people want to spend less, and we are there. So the team effort that we're talking about here, which is about the big picture, knowing those specific things that, let's say you just said the GPO, let's coordinate, collaborate, that was collaboration. And I think oftentimes the science, library science skill is full enough. Then you add all of this other stuff on the outside of it, you just can focus in on what you are very comfortable with, library science. But in the bigger picture of getting things done, I think Lori just mentioned about the congressional people not really, when they say things, you're like, oh my goodness. They're making us live to this statute and they think this is the way it's happening. But then the challenge is, oh my goodness, did we do a better job? We need to do a better job of educating them before they go out and proclaim the change.
Right. Well, and I suspected that, and this is just me, because I've been through a couple of, I've been around the block quite a few times. To me, tell me if I'm totally wrong, I think this administration is gonna be looking for collaboration between federal agencies, like we've done with the Library of Congress, and I think there's more and more and more of that. Basically, to solve a problem that's also gonna save taxpayer money. So, gone is so I'm thinking more of things, because I was talking with Blaine Desi not too long ago about things of the collaboration between GPO and LC that are going to save the taxpayer money. Why we've got, two organizations working on projects that are probably very similar. So the federal and web archiving thing, actually, we just got a request from a senator's office to do some presentation on that. I thought I sent that to you. It was like Wednesday. Went directly. So I suspect that some of those collaborative projects that somebody's picking up on those, like the Bound Congressional Record, we need to talk more with LC to try to find ways to work together where we're doing something big. But we're gonna be saving money. We don't have to give you any more money. You've already figured out a solution. Two of you guys working together and you've done something.
From this, these two resolutions need to be written. But you could go through that same process and say, we got the awareness, and there really are no resolutions that need to be written. That, advocacy in this sense would actually harm what's happening rather than help.
Right.
And that needs to be a perfectly fine option.
Well, I guess because we're coming towards the end of our time here, but this has been a very fascinating conversation, very helpful. I think to bring us back to moving legislation forward, and because again, our goal is going to be to have this 5-year plan done in time for annual. And I think it's important that we do that and have some so we can have it definitive, so we can move on for other things. But it really is sounding, and looking at my notes here, really is sounding like what this committee needs to do, is aside from expand, is really to focus on the process of how we go through our education and advocacy, education to advocacy. In other words, that if there's an idea, a concern, or what have you, as you say, the outcome needs to be, the resolution needs to be on the outcome end and not on the beginning end. And so the idea is that if this is something like, again, to use GPO as the example, if this is something we think GPO needs or should be doing, the first thing should be to, one, see if they're already doing it. But also to really be making sure that we are talking with them, and we are, communicating with them, working with them. If there's a program we need, if we need more information from you or from anyone else, is to do the research, to go back and gather the information and see, what is this actually a problem?
I think that's a really good point, because I just wrote that down. Because I think that's sort of what happened with the regional discard.
Yeah.
This is just coming from, probably not really, just forget who I am. Yeah. Yes. Remember that I've been in this a long time.
Yeah.
What happened is, if you guys identify a key concern or something that we've missed,
Right.
that we're not, we do a lot of things, but we missed something really key.
Right.
To me, that would be GODORT's role. Point out
Right.
something that, you guys, what happened to the microfiche thing?
Right.
We're still dealing with that.
Mhm.
Bring it back up.
Yeah.
And let us talk about it, because I think what happened with the regional discard, okay, that was a big concern. People have they don't have enough space on their shelves.
Yeah.
We heard it, we found, and now we've got this, now we've got to implement it. That's a big project for us. And a lot of things have come out of that, and different things have been solved. We're still working through some things. But to me, that's one of the key things, pat us on the back when we do something good. Sorry, David, I shouldn't be touching you, that's not.
Metaphoric.
But I was going to say, I think it's how it is set back that you think there's a problem, because frequently it's like this black. Oh my God, there's a problem. No, you're missing something.
Well, either that, or too frequently, it's like, well, GPO's not doing their job, when that's not the
They're
case.
not listening to
Yeah,
us.
they're not listening to us, which is not at all the
I
case.
have taken a few people by the elbow off into the side and of a room at LA and just said, remember in an era of government unfriendly to organizations like ours, any negative thing becomes a wedge. If somebody thinks that we don't deserve to exist, and they see one email where somebody is hopping mad about something, that can become the image of a wedge.
Yeah.
That can destroy the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for your blogging.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's how it's delivered is vitally important.
Yeah.
So it often is like, if you go into a management training seminar, they say, when you're going to sit down with an employee and point out the fact that they really screwed up, talk about the other 5 things they did wonderfully. And then they'll probably hear it as an even balance.
Okay.
So that's critical.
Well,
You're definitely,
Yeah.
one little bad tweet,
Yes.
okay, it can cause major things to tumble.
Yeah.
And,
well, again, this is because we're at the end of our time, but this has been a very enlightening discussion. I think this is a good starting off point for us to continue moving forward with this. Again, our goal is to have our 5-year plan done, and I think we've got some good stuff to start with. We will be having several conference calls, I would say, between now and June. And of course, if anyone has other suggestions for us or things that you would, think we should be addressing. But I think what we want our outcome again to be is that this is how the legislation committee functions within GODORT, and that the rest of GODORT understands how that works. And so I very much like the idea of, making sure every new group that comes in, we do our little legislation 101.
Just be prepared, you're gonna get some people say, that's not how we did it.
Oh, that is my least favorite phrase.
That's how you,
Yeah.
there was
that every
one other
day.
thing I thought that, I don't know if anybody else heard about this, and I hope I heard this correctly. Jessica McGilbert is leaving.
Yes.
The ALA Washington office.
Yes.
For other things. So I think that's gonna be an additional thing that we'll reach out to whoever the next successor
Yes.
is for her position.
Mhm.
Because, there may, there needs to be some other additional
Yeah.
work with them, because
Right.
they may have a whole totally different way of approaching how they're gonna work, so,
Yeah.
just wanted to let you know that we'll do that.
Yeah. Well,
from
we're-
GPO's perspective, and I didn't know if anybody knew all that.
Well, yeah, and I think we need to do that as well, I guess, is to wrap this up is, what, in these last couple of days, what I've kind of seen is that GODORT has really pulled back from a lot of this, and I think we need to be, more involved with that. And whoever the new person who replaces Jessica, one of the first calls has to be to that person to,
This could be a really busy next couple of years.
Oh, no
I mean,
kidding.
really, so,
no kidding.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if we,
Mhm. thank you, everyone. This has been very productive, and I guess we'll talk again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Samantha.
Did no one show up? Oh.